Good afternoon. I'm Bryan Kissinger, Trace 3 CISO and Senior Vice President of Security Solutions. Welcome back to another episode of Secure Correspondence. I'm joined today by HD Moore, runZero's Chief Technology Officer and co-founder. Welcome, HD.
Oh, thanks, Brian.
Hey, let's just jump right in. HD, who's runZero?
So, runZero is a company started back in 2018 with the goal of being able to find every single thing that an organization owns, whether it's on the cloud, on their internal network, external, you name it. One of the challenges that I ran into with doing consulting work is that we would go in and do the same pen test for the same large merchant bank quarter after quarter after quarter. And they did a really good job of protecting everything they knew about and a really bad job of defending against the things they didn't realize were even part of their network.
Awesome. Well, listen, everyone who's a security practitioner knows how important asset management is. If you don't know where it is, you can't secure it. But why is cyber asset management, in your opinion, playing such an increasingly important role in today's business landscape?
A lot of it just is with the changes to organizations between COVID, folks doing a lot more work from home, usually with very little notice, to kind of the cloud migrations and everything else in between. Like organizations are now massively sprawl across the world. It's no longer just a case of everything is in your corporate office or in your headquarters or in one cloud. It's everywhere, and it's much harder to keep track of stuff when you don't even know what network it's part of, or let alone who can access it or what ACLs are in place, who's managing it.
So, do you think asset management now is a technology category that's outpacing other parts of cybersecurity?
What's really funny about it is that every technology product, every security product for the most part, already had some sort of asset inventory component to it, but they weren't very good. And that's kind of what led us to build runZero. Is that if you look at every vuln scanner, if you look at every assessment system, every SIM, there's usually some aspect of asset inventory to it because they know about some of your systems. But what they don't know is about all of your systems, and that's really the big gap. And so what we're seeing is that the demand for knowing where all your stuff is has become much higher lately, just because of the combination of the Beyond Core zero trust model, the cloud deployment models, lots of M&A, lots of work from home. It just got much more complicated to figure out where all your stuff is.
Yeah, so you talked about the way our work environment has changed. What about from an industry perspective? Are you seeing that there are industries that need more help or should be putting more focus on asset management and as a critical part of their cyber programs?
Well, if you're a new technology company and everything you do is on the cloud, it's not too difficult. Like theoretically, you've got one major cloud provider, maybe a backup, it's all in one spot. But if you have any sort of physical presence in your business, if you're doing manufacturing, you're doing pharmaceuticals, you're doing auto sales, anything in between, you have a lot of distributed stuff. And everywhere you look, there's some sort of network to do that, hanging off a wall, connected to a thermostat, plugged into an aquarium fish tank, you name it. And all those devices are all connecting back out to the internet. They're all exposed in various fun ways. They're all patched at different intervals. It just keeps becoming much, much more complicated to get a handle on all the various things in your environment that affect your security.
Yeah, as a lot of our audience probably knows, I spent a lot of time in the healthcare industry, and so when I think about knowing where all of the different connected devices are, it's a very challenging issue. Also, a lot of our customers are big manufacturers, or they work in industries with a lot of OT, so that can certainly be very challenging to manage. On the other side of the coin, have you seen some industries or organizations that are doing it well, and what are they doing?
Oh, there's definitely a lot of folks who do a good job of monitoring what's on the network and what goes in and what goes out. But unfortunately, it's really tough to get a handle on everything. Like it's easy to secure a small network or a small VLAN or a small cloud environment. It's much more difficult to do so when you're bringing in multiple business units. You're doing lots of M&A. During COVID in particular, we saw a lot of folks in the healthcare industry get acquired. We saw hospitals both being bought and buying other people, and then bringing on all these various clinic networks into part of their network. And it's been kind of a disaster, right? Because a lot of folks who were working in those organizations pre-acquisition, they may not be there anymore. They may not have any documentation to show you where they had what network is in use, where each device is configured, what ACLs are in place. So you have to kind of reverse engineer that, and that's really what we try to solve at runZero, is helping you kind of reverse engineer your entire asset inventory with as little credentials as possible. But we can also go through and connect to APIs and everything else.
I think a lot of leaders and practitioners in the security world worry about the degree of implementation effort that it takes to put some of these solutions in place. Could you talk a little bit about the runZero solution? Are you up and running in a matter of hours? What does it require a customer to do?
Sure thing. If you look at how folks have traditionally tried to solve asset inventory, and especially doing really tight segmentation, they've looked at tools like NACs. And a NAC is amazing if you can deploy it. If you can do full-on enforcement, that's awesome. Good job. Go forth, do the thing. Unfortunately, getting a NAC deployed to every single site, every workspace, every Wi-Fi network is really difficult. So what we do instead is we can take kind of the opposite approach, where you can start off with zero credentials, no knowledge about your network whatsoever, and all you need is a network port, a Wi-Fi entry, some place to basically route traffic onto the environment. It can be through a VPN, it can be through a VPC bridge, almost anything, and quickly identify every single thing that's routable from that environment. So we'll do full RFC 1918 private IP space discovery. We'll show you a device wherever it is. We'll tell you what every device is, not just, hey, it's running Linux, but it's a Roku media player, or it's this type of IP camera, or it's this type of NAS device. And we do all that without credentials. So you don't have to go ask your IT folks for help. You don't have to work with your networking team. It's safe to run pretty much in OT and IT. So it's one of those things where the biggest hurdle to a lot of security folks being successful in asset inventory is having to work with other teams to get the information they need to solve that problem. And we try to kind of work around that to some extent, and so that anybody can get up and running within a few minutes. And doing a local network scans, maybe a minute or two, doing a full, every possible private IP space routable within your environment. That's typically an overnight job.
That's great. I mean, again, some of the hurdles are working across the departments, within an organization or geographies, and the barriers to entry sometimes to getting these solutions in place is significant. All right, I want to switch gears just for a second. You're obviously a leader in the cybersecurity arena. Why did you choose asset management?
I like hacking stuff, basically, and that's a weird answer to get into asset management. But if you go back to my early days, I was exploring phone networks, dialing stuff, war dialing, things like that. Internet, doing lots of internet-wide scans, running exploits for years, doing pen test assessments, lots of internet-facing research. And one thing I just really enjoyed was the discovery process, like going out and figuring out what's out there, like throwing a penny down a well and listening for the ping on the end. Right? To me, that is like probably the most exciting part of network security, cybersecurity, hacking, whatever you want to call it. And it was really cool to be able to take all the buckets and buckets of like pen test and hacker techniques that I've been using for years and do probably the most boring thing you can possibly do with it, which is provide an asset inventory. So in a lot of ways, you get to do like a lot of the really interesting research, you get to apply like all the cutting edge techniques, but the end result is something that's much better than your inventory spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's great. And so we've seen the cybersecurity industry evolve quite a bit, over the last few years, from on-premise environments to remote environments to cloud environments to, ransomware still being, one of the most prolific threats. From your chair, where do you see the cybersecurity market evolving over the next 5 years?
It's tough, especially this year. A lot of folks are looking to consolidate solutions, trying to get like a single pane of glass for everything they possibly can. They're looking at lots of folks all claiming to have the same impact, but having very different tools and methodologies to get there. And to some extent, it's not different from right after the dot-com crash 2002, right after the global financial crisis 2009. Folks really are trying to get the most value for their dollar for security. And that means, working with, you can either get the best in class solutions and get all of them and try to glue them together yourself, or you can try to get one big system that's not particularly good at lots of things, but it does it all in one place. Or you can work with a really good integrator who can actually take the best in class and make them work together and make that whole process work well. You need to work with somebody who actually knows, what the best solutions are. The challenge in security is that we're all selling the same thing. We're basically selling a more secure environment, and how you get there is very different. We feel that asset inventory is a really strong base to build your security foundation on. And without that, it's really hard to secure everything because you won't know, okay, I forgot about this DSL router in the closet or this other network, this other VLAN in Japan that I didn't realize could route to this other network I care about. So without that visibility, it's really tough to really make any progress on that. So we've really settled on asset inventory being the base and then building lots of solutions on the top of that, working with the partner ecosystem, working with your SIMs, working with your vulnerability management, working with your EDRs to really provide kind of that full circle perspective of your environment.
Yeah, you brought up a great point. This has been a little bit of the year of platformatization, tools rationalization. I think that security leaders are under pressure nowadays to squeeze out every dollar of value from their investment. So, really agree with you that sound asset management is the foundation to build on. All right, you've quoted yourself or cited yourself as a hacker, multiple times. Is there a threat to assets that you've come across that has been like the most challenging or the most interesting? Like, tell us your coolest story.
There's lots of fun ones out there. What we found is like, in my previous life, I do a lot of pen tests, and usually for companies who can spend a lot of money on security. And so you're not going to get in through the front door. That's usually, if you've got a decent security budget, if you're hiring a great security company, if you're spending a lot of money on security tooling, you probably have a good handle on what you know about. So we just kept having to go find the stuff in the corner. We worked with a company who had, super, everything from like air gap security around their hardware security modules to just really tight network controls, monitoring every packet. And we finally were able to break in through a tape library robot. So a device that literally picks up tapes and moves them around. So you have to go find kind of the crufty stuff in the corner that there is no management for, that has probably 5 years out of date, that no vendor is currently responsible for. Another thing that I usually look for are machines that are obviously unmanaged. So if you look at the local network and you identify, okay, all these machines are joined to the main Windows domain or AD that you've got there, and you've got 5 machines that aren't, well, are those vendor machines? Are they OT? Are they HMIs? Like, they're probably something that is not being updated, probably not being patched, probably not part of your SMSS. Like, those are usually kind of the low-hanging fruit. So from an attacking perspective, you usually look for the outliers. And from a like overall threat perspective, what I worry about most these days is more of the supply chain side. Having one of your vendors that you don't consider to be a huge security risk being compromised, and then pushing compromised updates to your devices.
Yeah, 100%. I think all of us that have managed a fairly complex environment, those are the things you worry about. Like, what's still running Windows NT out there, or what is that thing that is incapable of having any kind of security loaded on it? So, really agree with you there. Well, this has been a fantastic session. HD, anything you want to leave our audience with?
I appreciate your time. Thanks, Brian.
Well, HD, thanks again for joining us. Really enjoyed the time. We have a great time during these secure correspondence sessions, and we look forward to our audience joining us on the next one. Thank you very much.